In the shadow of the mighty Alps, a story of treachery, war, and political intrigue unfolds a tale that could be straight out of a Hollywood movie. Imagine a world where knights in shining armor rode across snow-capped mountains, where popes battled for power, and where cities were ruled by ruthless despots. This is the world of 14th century Europe, and it's a story that's as dramatic as it is true. In the year 1369, a man named Enguerrand de Coucy found himself in a bind. Coucy was a French nobleman, a knight of great renown, and a man who had seen his fair share of battles. He was also the son-in-law of King Edward III of England, which made him a powerful figure in the ongoing 100 Years' War between England and France. But at this moment, Coucy was dealing with a different kind of conflict, one that would test his loyalty and his skills as a warrior. Coucy had a problem. He was heir to a vast estate in Picardy, but a significant portion of his inheritance was located in the territory of the Habsburg Dukes, a powerful and influential family in the region. The Habsburgs were not known for their generosity, and they were not about to hand over any land without a fight. To complicate matters, Coucy was also involved in a dispute with the Count of Montbéliard, a strategic ally who controlled key territories in Alsace. Coucy needed help, and he was willing to pay for it. In a bold move, Coucy contracted with the Count of Montbéliard to provide military aid against the Habsburg Dukes. The price: a staggering 21,000 francs. It was a significant sum, but Coucy was determined to secure his inheritance. To make his intentions clear, he issued a manifesto to the towns of Strasbourg and Colmar, assuring them that he had no hostile intentions against them. He simply wanted what was rightfully his. However, the wheels of fate can turn rapidly, and Coucy's plans began to unravel. Some say that the Dukes of Austria, learning of Coucy's plans, recruited a powerful enemy of Montbéliard to immobilize his forces. Others claim that Coucy received an urgent message from King Charles V of France, demanding his immediate service in the war against England. Whatever the reason, Coucy found himself in a difficult position. He had to make a choice: abandon his inheritance or violate his duty to the king. In the end, Coucy made a decision that would shape the rest of his life. He chose to remain neutral, at least in the eyes of the king. This allowed him to vanish from the political scene for the next 2 years, with only a single reference placing him in Prague in January 1370. In Prague, Coucy dated a legal document endowing an annuity of 40 marks sterling from his English revenues to his seneschal, the Chanoine de Robersart. This journey to Prague was likely an attempt to enlist the support of the Holy Roman Emperor, who had influence over the Habsburgs. Despite his efforts, the emperor acknowledged the justice of Coucy's claims, but could not force the Habsburgs to comply. After a 22-month hiatus, Coucy reappeared in Savoy, where he joined forces with his cousin, the Green Count of Savoy, Amadeus VI. The Green Count was a formidable leader, known for his military prowess and his strong will. Together, Coucy and Amadeus fought against a variety of antagonists, including the Visconti of Milan, who were expanding their control over northern Italy. Italy, in the 14th century, was a land of contradictions. On one hand, it was a cradle of art, commerce, and culture. Cities like Florence, Venice, and Genoa were thriving, their streets bustling with merchants, artisans, and scholars. Italian bankers had a monopoly on finance in Europe, and the country was a hub of trade and innovation. On the other hand, Italy was a hotbed of political chaos. The fall of the Roman Empire had left a power vacuum, and various factions vied for control. The Papal States, the territories under the direct rule of the Pope, were a constant source of conflict. The struggle between the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire, as well as the rivalry between the Guelphs, supporters of the Pope, and the Ghibellines, supporters of the Emperor, plunged Italy into a state of near-constant warfare. The situation was made worse by the rise of powerful despots who ruled their city-states with an iron fist. These despots, known as signori, included figures like the Visconti of Milan, the Malatesta of Rimini, and the Ordelaffi of Forli. They ruled by force, often suppressing the democratic institutions that had once given these cities their autonomy. The people of Italy, despite their talk of unity and nationhood, were divided and ruled by tyrants. The chaos in Italy created a fertile ground for foreign mercenaries, known as condottieri. These soldiers of fortune, bound by no loyalties and driven by profit, prolonged wars, and exacerbated the suffering of the civilian population. Merchants and travelers had to hire armed escorts to protect themselves, and city gates were locked at night to keep out marauders. The prior of a monastery near Siena was forced to move his possessions frequently to avoid being looted by roving bands of mercenaries. Even in such a lawless environment, life went on. The weavers of Florence, the armorers of Milan, and the glassblowers of Venice continued to ply their trades, creating goods that were prized throughout Europe. In the midst of this political turmoil, the papacy struggled to maintain control over its temporal base in the Papal States. The Avignon papacy, which had moved the seat of the Pope from Rome to Avignon in 1309, faced significant challenges. Governing from a distance was nearly impossible, and the cost of trying to maintain control was high. The papacy engaged in a series of wars, imposing heavy taxes and installing unpopular governors, which only increased the hostility of the Italian people. One of the most significant threats to the papacy was the expansion of Milan under the Visconti. In 1350, Bernabo Visconti seized Bologna, a papal fief, and began to threaten the papacy's control over central Italy. The Pope, Urban V, responded with excommunication and a call for a crusade against the Visconti, but these efforts were largely ignored by the Italians, who saw the papacy as a tool of French interest. Urban V, a former Benedictine monk, was a sincere and devout man who sought to reform the church. He reduced multiple benefices, raised educational standards for priests, and took measures against corruption. However, his efforts to return the papacy to Rome met with fierce resistance. The cardinals, who enjoyed the luxuries of Avignon, were reluctant to leave, and the King of France was opposed to the move. Despite this, Urban was determined to return to Rome, believing it was the only way to restore the church's authority and prestige. In April 1367, Urban carried out the Great Removal, setting sail from Marseille for Rome amid the protests of the cardinals. He arrived in Leghorn, where he was met by Giovanni Agnello, the Doge of Pisa, and the English mercenary Sir John Hawkwood. The sight of Hawkwood's men at arms in their glittering armor made the Pope uneasy, and he refused to disembark. It was not a good omen for his return to Rome. Rome itself was a shadow of its former self. Without the presence of the papal court, the city had fallen into decay. The population had dwindled, classical monuments were vandalized, and the streets were filled with rubbish. Despite these challenges, Urban entered Rome with a large escort, determined to reassert papal authority. However, the challenges were too great, and Urban was forced to return to Avignon in 1370. He died shortly after, perhaps overcome by the weight of his failures. The cardinals, seeking a more pliable successor, elected Pierre Roger de Beaufort as Pope Gregory XI. Gregory, a pious and modest man, was initially seen as a safe choice. However, he felt a deep sense of mission to return the papacy to Rome. In 1371, he joined the Papal League against the Visconti, inheriting the war that Urban had started. Gregory's efforts to secure the Papal States against the Visconti were crucial, and he appointed the Green Count of Savoy as Captain General of the League forces in western Lombardy. It was during this time that Coucy, now a key figure in the Savoyard campaign, crossed the Alps with a company of 100 lances. The journey was arduous, but the medieval travelers were undeterred by the physical challenges. The Alpine passes, though difficult, were navigable with the help of local guides. Coucy's arrival in Piedmont marked the beginning of a new phase in the conflict. He wasted no time in launching a campaign against the Marquis of Saluzzo, an ally of Bernabo Visconti. Coucy's tactics were effective, and he quickly gained control of several towns, prompting a counter-offensive by the Visconti. The conflict in Italy was a microcosm of the broader political and religious struggles of the 14th century. The papacy, the Habsburgs, the Visconti, and the various city-states were all vying for power and influence. Enguerrand de Coucy, caught in the middle of these conflicts, had to navigate a complex web of alliances and rivalries. His journey from a French nobleman to a key player in the Italian wars is a testament to the fluid and unpredictable nature of medieval politics. In the end, the story of Coucy and the wars in Italy is a reminder of the human cost of political ambition. The knights, the popes, and the despots all had their reasons for fighting, but it was the ordinary people who suffered the most. Despite the chaos and violence, life went on. The weavers wove, the merchants traded, and the artists created, even in the midst of war. It is a story of resilience, of the human spirit enduring against all odds, and of the enduring legacy of a time that shaped the modern world.